Mahamati once more asked the Buddha. The Bhagavan has said it is due to projections that we imagine the existence of different things, and it isn't they themselves that exist, but only the projection of them that exists. Bhagavan. If it is only the projection of them that exists and their own corresponding existence does not exist, would not the affliction and purification of which the Bhagavan speaks also suffer from non-existence, since the existence of whatever is imagined does not itself exist? The Buddha told Mahamati, so it is. So it is. It is as you say, Mahamati. What is real is not what fools imagine as existing. What they imagine as existing lacks any characteristic of its own existence. However, Mahamati, according to Buddha knowledge there is something that exists, something the existence of which is known by means of the noble insight and noble vision of the eye of noble wisdom. Mahamati asked the Buddha, although those who are wise thus know what exists by means of the noble insight and noble vision of the eye of noble wisdom and not by means of any kind of divine or physical eye. This is not what fools imagine, Bhagavan. How then do fools get free from such projections if they are unaware of a higher reality? For they are neither deluded, Bhagavan, nor are they not deluded. And how so? Because they are not aware of the existence of a higher reality, and because they do not see what transcends the characteristics of existence and non-existence. Bhagavan, the wise do not view what they imagine as real in this manner because they do not consider the individual characteristics of an external realm as external. Bhagavan. They thus perceive the characteristics of self-existence as an imagined reality and do not say it is due to the presence or absence of causes but due to falling prey to views of existence and that theirs is a different realm unlike that. But this is a circular argument, Bhagavan, because the characteristics of self-existence are not known. Also, Bhagavan, if the characteristics of self-existence are not the result of an imagined reality, how is their projection not a projection but rather a discrimination of suchness? Bhagavan, projections differ, and the characteristics of self-existence differ. Bhagavan, because the characteristics of self-existence and their projections are not the same, how do people know what is not real if they don't imagine anything? But you say what beings imagine does not really exist in order to free them from projections. Bhagavan. Why prevent beings from becoming attached to views of existence and non-existence if they then end up becoming attached to views of the existence of the realm in which Buddha knowledge functions? Why teach the non-existence of detachment and then teach the existence of Buddha knowledge? The Buddha told Mahamati, I do not teach the non-existence of detachment, nor do I fall prey to views of existence in speaking of the higher reality of Buddha knowledge. Rather, it is to help beings who have been attached to existence since time without beginning overcome their fears. To those attached to views of the existence of a higher reality, I teach detachment, Mahamati. I do not teach characteristics of self-existence. Rather, Mahamati, I focus on the personal realization of detachment. On transcending deluded views. On transcending views of what exists or does not exist that are perceptions of one's own mind. On obtaining the threefold liberation. On being marked with the mark of suchness, on examining self-existence based on personal realization, and on transcending views of the existence or non-existence of what is real. 70. Furthermore, Mahamati, bodhisattvas should not maintain the proposition, whatever exists does not arise. And why not? Because the proposition about the existence of things would not exist, and because its reason would be characterized by arising. To state the proposition, whatever exists does not arise, contradicts itself. The proposition, whatever exists does not arise, contradicts itself because the proposition would arise in relation to something. And also because a proposition concerning the non-arising of things would be among those things, and because its cessation would not arise. Thus, to maintain the proposition, whatever exists does not arise, is contradicted by the proposition itself. Mahamati. As for the proposition, existence and non-existence do not arise, such a proposition would be among the things that exist, although characteristics of its existence or non-existence would not. Mahamati. Even if in regard to the proposition of non-arising one could maintain the proposition, whatever exists does not arise. This proposition is contradicted because the characteristics of its existence or non-existence do not arise. You should not maintain propositions. The five-part syllogism produces numerous errors due to differing characteristics and changing reasons and because they are fabrications. Hence, you should not maintain propositions. As with, whatever exists does not arise, likewise in regard to, whatever exists is empty, or, whatever exists has no self-existence, you should not maintain propositions. Mahamati. Bodhisattvas say instead, whatever exists is like an illusion or a dream, because it is seen and not seen, and because it is a mistake of perception. You should say that the existence of everything is like that of an illusion or a dream, unless it makes people turn away in fear. Mahamati. Foolish people are given to views of existence and non-existence. Don't make them turn away in fear from the Mahayana. The Bhagavan then repeated the meaning of this in verse. There is no teaching and no self-existence. No objects and no attachments. These are the projections of fools. The misperceptions of corpses. Whatever exists does not arise. This doctrine of other schools is wrong. Nothing at all arises. What exists results from conditions. Whatever exists does not arise. The wise hold no such conception. Because propositions arise from reasons. The wise get rid of them all. Like seeing through a cataract. The distorted view through strands of hair. Projections of existence. Are the misperceptions of fools. Fabrications fill the three realms. Self-existent objects don't exist. Fabricating self-existent objects. Projection gives rise to projection. The forms and objects of fabrication utterly confuse the mind. Bodhisattvas who see past these dispense with all projections, perceiving water where there is none, the result of thirst and desire. Fools are thus bewildered, unlike the wise who see. The vision of the wise is clear, rising from samadhis of the three liberations, beyond the reach of birth or death. They wander in a realm of no projection. Practitioners dwell in a projectionless realm, free from existence and non-existence, where existence and non-existence merge, and the fruit of Buddhahood grows. As for existence and non-existence, as for how they merge, because the mind doesn't know, confusion swirls inside and out. Once you make them stop, your mind will behold their identity. 71. Mahamati once more asked, the Bhagavan has said knowledge is not obtained from an objectified world because it would consist in nothing more than the assertion of projections. Since a projection that can be grasped does not exist, nor does the one who grasps, grasping does not occur. Thus, knowledge does not arise, only the names of projections. But how is it, Bhagavan? Is it because we do not perceive whether the individual or shared characteristics of what exists are different or not that knowledge is not obtained? Or is it because it is obscured by the variety of the individual or shared characteristics of what exists that knowledge is not obtained? Or is it because it is blocked by mountains or walls or by the elements of earth, water, fire, or wind that knowledge is not obtained? Or is it because it is too distant or too near that knowledge is not obtained? Or is it because of blindness or dimness of wit or impaired senses, due to immaturity or old age that knowledge is not obtained? Bhagavan. If it is because we don't perceive whether the individual or shared characteristics of what exists are different or not that knowledge is not obtained, then we should not speak of knowledge but of an absence of knowledge because something exists but isn't perceived. or if it is because it is obscured by the variety of the individual and shared characteristics of what exists that knowledge is not obtained, that too is an absence of knowledge, not knowledge. Bhagavan, knowledge arises where there is something knowable, not where nothing exists. It is because we encounter what is knowable that we speak of knowledge. If it is because it is blocked by mountains or walls or by the elements of earth, water, fire, or wind, or because it is too distant or too close, or because of blindness or dimness of wit or impaired senses, due to immaturity or old age, that knowledge is not obtained. That too is not knowledge, but an absence of knowledge, because something exists but cannot be perceived. The Buddha told Mahamati, "It is not so. The absence of knowledge is knowledge, not no knowledge. I am not concealing anything when I say that knowledge is not obtained from an objectified world, because it would consist in nothing but the assertion of projections. When you perceive that what exists or does not exist is nothing but a perception of your own mind, and that external existence does not exist, you know without perceiving objects. It is because nothing is perceived that the knowledge of something knowable does not arise. Even among the three liberations, knowledge is not obtained. Those whose discriminations consist in the habit energy of beginningless fabrications of existence and non-existence would not know something like this. They are unaware of such knowledge. Therefore, I teach that the ceaseless projection of the existence or non-existence of an external world of objects is based on nothing but the perceptions of one's own mind. But because beings are attached to grasping the characteristics of a self and what belongs to a self, they do not perceive that these are nothing but perceptions of their own minds and give rise instead to projections of knowledge and something knowable. Because of such projections, they are unable to ascertain the existence or non-existence of anything external and base themselves on nihilistic views. The Bhagavan then repeated the meaning of this in verse. There is an objectified world beyond the reach of knowledge, and the absence of knowledge isn't knowledge. This is what those who imagine things say. Something exists without distinctions, beyond the reach of knowledge, too near, too far, or somehow obstructed. This I call false knowledge. Among the young, the old, or impaired, knowledge doesn't arise. Yet something exists as knowable. This, too, I call false knowledge. 72. Furthermore, Mahamati, foolish beings are confused by the habit energy of beginningless fabrications and projections. And once they are confused, they do not easily understand the way of personal attainment or the way of instruction. Because they are attached to characteristics of external existence that are perceptions of their own minds and attached to explanations of expedience, they are not adept at distinguishing the characteristics of a way of personal attainment that does not include the four possibilities. Mahamati addressed the Buddha. It is, indeed, as the Bhagavan teaches. May the Bhagavan please distinguish the way of instruction and the way of attainment for us, so that I and the other bodhisattvas will become adept at both, and so that the foolish people, Shravakas, and Pratyeka Buddhas of future ages will not be left wanting. The Buddha told Mahamati, well said, well said. Listen carefully and ponder it well, and I will tell you. Mahamati said, may we be so instructed. The Buddha told Mahamati, the Tathagatas of the three ages teach two ways. The way of instruction and the way of personal attainment. The way of instruction means teaching the different texts and sutras appropriate to the minds of beings. This is what is meant by the way of instruction. The way of personal attainment is for practitioners who free themselves from the different projections that are perceptions of their own minds. This means not falling prey to categories of sameness or difference or both or neither. Transcending completely the mind, the will, and conceptual consciousness, and avoiding views of what brings about the personal realization of the realm of Buddha knowledge, which Shravakas, Pratyeka Buddhas, and followers of other paths given to dualistic views cannot possibly know. This is what I mean by the teaching of the way of personal attainment. Mahamati. This is what characterizes the way of personal attainment and the way of instruction, and this is what you and the other bodhisattvas should cultivate. The Bhagavan then repeated the meaning of this in verse. My teaching includes two ways: attainment and instruction. Instruction for beginners. Attainment for practitioners. 73. Mahamati again asked the Buddha, Bhagavan, the Tathagata once said, do not associate with those who engage in the various kinds of materialist eloquence. Whoever associates with them will embrace desires of the flesh and will not embrace the Dharma. Bhagavan, why did you say this? The Buddha told Mahamati, materialists employ all manner of expressions, arguments, metaphors, and embellishments to attract and deceive foolish people. They do not accept the personal understanding of what is real, nor are they aware that their projection of what exists is a delusion. Falling prey to dualities, they confuse simple-minded people and also harm themselves and cannot escape their continuation in other forms of existence. Unable to understand what are nothing but perceptions of their own mind, they do not get free of their attachment to projections of external existence. Thus, those who engage in materialist eloquence do not escape deception and confusion or the sorrows and afflictions of birth, old age, illness, and death. Mahamati, Shakra was versed in a wide range of discourse and himself authored a treatise on speech. There once was a proponent of materialism who assumed the form of a serpent and entered Shakra's palace and proposed a debate. I have come to destroy Shakra's thousand-spoke chariot. If I lose, I will acknowledge his superiority, and he can cut off every one of my heads. Once he declared his intentions, he used Shakra's own arguments to overwhelm him. When Shakra acknowledged defeat, he smashed Shakra's chariot, then returned to the human world. Thus, Mahamati, the arguments, metaphors, and embellishments of materialists, the expressions of which even beasts are able to employ, mislead gods and asuras into becoming attached to views of arising and cessation. How much more so humans? Therefore, Mahamati, you should keep your distance from materialists because they are able to promote the causes of suffering. Don't associate with them. Mahamati, even though materialist doctrines number in the hundreds of thousands, Mahamati, materialists only speak about the realm of sensory awareness. And it will only be in the final 500 years of later ages that they will create schisms and their mistaken views of causation will flourish and be accepted by false disciples. Mahamati, when materialists thus create schisms using the expressions, metaphors, and embellishments of other schools, they will do so based on their own reasoning, not on their own understanding. Mahamati, followers of other paths have no doctrines concerning personal understanding. Nor do any of the countless hundreds of thousands of other teachings expounded by materialists teach personal understanding. Nor do they themselves realize the foolishness of materialism. Mahamati then asked the Buddha, Bhagavan, while the various expressions, metaphors, and embellishments used by materialists and followers of other paths do not involve personal understanding but rather attachment to their own reasoning, does the Bhagavan not also teach materialism in his exposition of countless different terms to the gods, humans, and asuras who come here from different realms, and not personal understanding? And does he not include arguments that are counted among the wisdom of other schools? The Buddha told Mahamati, I do not teach materialism, nor that anything comes or goes. I only teach what does not come and what does not go. Mahamati, what comes refers to what gathers and appears. What goes refers to what scatters and disappears. What neither comes nor goes does not arise and does not cease. The meaning of what I teach cannot be counted among the fabrications of materialists. And how so? because it is not attached to an external existence that does not exist. Dualistic fabrications cannot affect those who dwell on the perceptions of their own mind. The external world and its forms do not exist. Once you see they are perceptions of your own mind, fabrications that are perceptions of your own mind do not arise. And when fabrications do not arise, you enter the empty, formless, effortless threefold gate of liberation, which is why it is called liberation. Mahamati, I recall once a materialist Brahmin came to where I was staying and without waiting asked, Gautama, is everything created? I answered, Brahman, that everything is created is the most rudimentary kind of materialism. He asked again, is everything not created? I answered, that everything is not created is the second kind of materialism. He asked again, is everything permanent? Or is everything impermanent? Does everything arise? Or does everything not arise? I answered, that makes 6 kinds of materialism. Mahamati, he asked again, is everything the same? Or is everything different? Is everything both of these? Or is everything neither of these? Or does everything appear due to multiple causes? I answered, that makes 11 kinds of materialism. Mahamati, he asked again, is everything neutral? Or is everything karmic? Is there a self? Or is there no self? Does this world exist? Or does this world not exist? Or is there another world? Or is there no other world? Is there liberation? Or is there no liberation? Is everything momentary? Or is everything not momentary? And are space, cessation, and nirvana created, Gautama? Or are they not created? And is there an intermediate existence? Or is there no intermediate existence? Mahamati, I answered, Brahman, all these things of which you speak are materialism. This materialism of yours is not what I teach. I only teach that the cause of the 3 realms and their various ills is the habit energy of fabrications and projections without beginning. But because you are unable to see that they are merely perceptions of your own mind, you give rise to projections and objectify an external existence. According to followers of other paths, awareness arises from the threefold combination of a self, sense organs, and sense objects, but not according to me. Brahman, I do not teach that there are causes, nor do I teach that there are no causes. I only teach causation as a fabrication of projecting the existence of a subject and an object. This is not something you or others who accept the continuity of a self can understand. Mahamati, nirvana, space, and cessation are not 3 things. They are only counted as 3 things. Furthermore, Mahamati, this materialist Brahman asked me again, are ignorance, desire, and karma the cause of the 3 realms? Or are they not the cause? I answered, both of these are also materialism. He asked again, does everything have individual and shared characteristics? I answered, this is also materialism. Brahman, any movement of the mind involving projection of an external object is materialism. Again, Mahamati, the Brahman asked, is there any teaching that is not materialism? I am versed in all the doctrines of other schools and in the different expressions, arguments, metaphors, and embellishments of their teachings. I answered, there is, Brahman, but it is not one of yours. It is not a fabrication, and it is not a doctrine, and it is not a teaching. But it is not a teaching, and its various expressions are not embellished with arguments and metaphors. The Brahman asked, what is it that is not materialism, not a doctrine, and not a teaching? I answered, Brahman, there is something that is not materialism, but it is something you followers of other paths cannot understand due to your mistaken attachment to the fabrication and projection of external existence. Projections do not arise when you understand that existence and non-existence are nothing but perceptions of your own mind. And projections do not arise when you do not grasp external objects. The permanent cessation of projection, this is what I mean by, what is not materialism. This is my teaching and not yours. Briefly. Brahman. If consciousness involves coming or going, birth or death, joy or suffering, disappearance or appearance, contact or grasping, or if it involves attachment to a combination or a continuity or to a desire or a cause, Brahman, if it involves anything like this, it is your materialism and not mine. Mahamati, after this materialist Brahman had asked in this manner, and I had answered in this manner, he was silent. Then he left without saying another word. But he thought about his own understanding and said to himself, this Buddhist monk is incomprehensible. He teaches no arising, no form, no cause, and that once someone becomes aware that what they perceive are their own projections, projections do not arise. Mahamati, you asked me earlier why I said anyone who associated with those who engage in materialist eloquence would embrace desires of the flesh and not the Dharma. This is why. Mahamati asked the Buddha, Bhagavan, what does it mean to embrace desires of the flesh or the Dharma? The Buddha told Mahamati, it is excellent, indeed, that you should think to ask about the meaning of such expressions on behalf of beings in the future. Listen carefully, and ponder it well, and I will tell you. Mahamati bowed and said, may we be so instructed. The Buddha told Mahamati, desires of the flesh refer to those that involve clutching or letting go, touching or tasting, attachment to external sensation, addiction to dualistic views, and rebirth once more in a suffering body along with the anxiety, grief and affliction of birth, old age, and death. All such tribulations arise from desire and from associating with materialism or materialists. This is what I and other Buddhas refer to as desires of the flesh. This is what is meant by embracing desires of the flesh and not embracing the Dharma. And to what, Mahamati, does embracing the Dharma refer? This means understanding what are nothing but perceptions of one's own mind. Seeing that beings have no self and that dharmas have no self. Not giving rise to projections. Becoming versed in the higher stages. Transcending the mind, the will, and conceptual consciousness, having one's forehead anointed with wisdom by all the Buddhas, embracing and fulfilling the 10 inexhaustible vows, and gaining effortless mastery of all teachings. This is what is meant by the Dharma. It means not falling prey to any view, any fabrication, any projection, any existence or duality. Mahamati, foolish people and most followers of other paths fall prey to such dualities as permanence and annihilation, but not the wise. Those who accept the doctrine of no causation give rise to views of permanence, while those who accept the destruction of external causes and the non-existence of conditions give rise to views of annihilation. Mahamati, not seeing anything originate or persist or cease is what I mean by the Dharma. Mahamati, you and the other bodhisattvas should reflect on what is meant by desires of the flesh and the Dharma. The Buddha then repeated the meaning of this in verse. The different kinds of materialism. The false teachings of other paths. Projections of cause and effect. Include no personal attainment. Only this personal attainment of mine transcends cause and effect. Thus I tell disciples, avoid materialist views. What is only mind cannot be seen, nor is a divided mind perceived. When grasper and grasped do not exist, the eternal and momentary are both transcended. The slightest movement of the mind. This is what materialism is. Unmoved by projections are those who see their own mind. It comes, means something appears. It goes, means something disappears. Those who know what comes and goes. Stop giving rise to projections. Permanence or impermanence. Effects or no effects. This world or another world. These comprise the materialist way. LXXIVIV Mahamati once more asked the Buddha, Bhagavan, when you speak of nirvana, what do you mean by nirvana, as followers of other paths also imagine something? The Buddha told Mahamati, listen carefully and ponder it well, and I will explain this to you. Followers of other paths do, indeed, imagine something as nirvana. But what they imagine does not accord with nirvana. Mahamati said, may we be so instructed, Bhagavan. The Buddha told Mahamati, for followers of some paths it is the cessation of the skandhas, the dhehatas, and the ayatanas, or the absence of worldly desires, or the impermanence of everything they see, or the non-arising of any and all mental activity, or not thinking about past, future, or present states, or putting an end to all sensation, like the extinguishing of a lamp or a fire or the destruction of a seed, or not giving rise to projections. These are among their conceptions of nirvana. But nirvana, Mahamati, is not the destruction of anything. Mahamati, some think liberation is going from one place to another place, a place where thoughts of an external world cease, like when the wind stops. Some think eliminating the view of the knower and the known is liberation. Some see permanence and impermanence as liberation. Some see the